Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today for a conclusion of our talk on Lastwall. Last week the country, because we needed the backdrop to talk about the people. In actuality, the goal has always been scratching the organization off of our ever-expanding list of topics, but we needed the nation as prologue. Now the real show begins. Where we left off last time, Lastwall fell to the Whispering Tyrant, becoming the Gravelands. However, despite what it seemed, there were a few small victories. First and foremost, the Lich was eventually driven back to regroup, turning the loss of the nation into more analogous to a stalemate with heavy losses, really, in an optimistic outlook. Another is that the last Lord of Lastwall, Archon II, managed to escape safely with the help of a group of goblins. Eventually making it to Absalom, he continued to fight, making impassioned pleas for the support to help end the tyranny of the tyrant. This allowed the heart of the nation to live on, for the time being, with the people who managed to survive. What's more, a series of small miracles led to an event now known as the Reforging. There, Crusaders were given the new weapons made from surplus ingots, which were abandoned. All while many of the most well-known of Lastwall leadership boasted the spirit of the former Knights of Awesome. By week's end, the Knights of Lastwall stood shield to shield, ready to rend the tyrant's brood. The Knights are made of several factions, all working together with the shared goal of taking down undead, especially in the march against the Whispering Tyrant. As for when a band becomes its own, there are various potential methods to reach legitimacy. Some go by a three-camp rule, where 3 separate camps have acknowledged them. Others by having 2 official factions acknowledge their legitimacy, not like how the firebands do things. Finally, what is known as Smith's Choice, where the blacksmith begins carrying a band's unique equipment. Regardless, the first we need to talk about are of course going to be the original 2. The first are the Shining Sentinels, both the original faction of the Knights, as well as the most social. They are the group who prepares. They know they are not ready to take on the Whispering Tyrant head-on, and no foolhardy trying will just lead to loss of life. Therefore, they ever prepare, taking on lesser evils and injustices across the Inner Sea region, while recruiting people to take part in the Knights' fight. They hope to one day be able to take on the Whispering Tyrant with both tactics which outsmart one who has planned for centuries, and an army large enough to outnumber the undead. The faction's official leader is Uthon II, who is currently regrouping the Knights in Absalom as well as petitioning the city for assistance. A little closer to the front lines, advisor of the Knights of Lastwall, Calistria Imadar, who was former head priest of Lastwall's Church of Iomade, it usually calls the shots in the day-to-day. The other major faction is the Crimson Reclaimers. When Calibrin's non-binary child, Clareth, became tired of the wait-and-see approach, he ran off, only to return during the mysterious power of the Crimson Oath, empowering those who fight the undead. Clareth inspired others to take a more direct approach, directly going to where the most danger is, and throwing away the tactics of stiff paladins, doing whatever underhanded actions need to be done to bring an end to the enemies. Despite the faction's origins, and despite the fact that mother and child still tend to butt heads when they are what they agree to be the best tactics, the 2 factions and the leaders are on relatively good terms, neither side forgetting who the true enemy is. Other major groups are associated with forces outside of Lastwall, all coming together to fight the Lich, just like the Shining Crusade before them. First, for a couple of allies from within the Eye of Dread, but who were some of the last those of Lastwall were expecting, we have the Orcish Rampart Warband, the ones who fought against the border and who now defend their former enemies out of respect. And also we have the Charcoal Battalion, sent by Oprek, forces of the non-humans who some are still a little wary of, but Clarif and the Crimson Claimers have accepted them, so they're in. From the Shining Kingdoms, Eutropia's vanguard is Talda stepping into the battle against the Tyrant once again, and the Vulture Knights are a special unit of Andoran's Eagle Knights, devoted to ending the undead threat. From elsewhere in Aveston, the Order of the Shining Sword is full of bored veterans from the Worldwound, while the Dozen Roses is a band of former Grey Maidens, fighting beside each other as always. Finally, showing up from outside the northern continent, we have the Venomous Scholars from the Regamia and the Final Epitaph, a special unit of Pharasma's faith, because undead. And finally, minor factions. Chroniclers of Lastwall are devoted not to the fight, but shifting through the rubble of Lastwall, working to recover every cultural touchstone they can. Copperheads also take a backseat, managing the money instead. Grizzled Greys tend to ride the camp, passing on their experience to new recruits working their minds, while Cookers' hand works their bodies. Echoes of Glory go around spreading the words of the Knights, working to inspire others to stand and fight. The Vigilant keeps an eye out for callers to infiltrate the ranks, and hopefully do a better job at it than Knoppers did. The Looking Glass are diviners who keep a bird's eye view of everything, circulating information as fast as possible. Herders do charge in the fray, but to save the animals still in the region. And what better scouts are there than the Wing Squad, sprites who have joined in for the good of their lands. And smaller but slightly more combat active groups include the Goblins trained into the Crooked Watch and the minor Pathfinder faction known as the Hushers. Here is something I like to see in books like these: faiths. No secret I like deities, so let's look through the most popular within the Knights of Lastwall. First, for main deities they worship, Iomedae. Nothing more to say, just Iomedae. Same with Pharasma, considering the enemy is undead. Sarenrae and Shaylin are also here for help, as is my own mistress, Milani. We have two of the Imperial Lords who got the most information during the 1E days, Regathiel and Virdes, as well as two new faces we only have brief bios for, Alquarios and Felina. There is some connection with Erasni in the ranks, some whispering she is behind the Crimson Oath, and followers of Kuzatal have also joined the fray. Rounding us out, we have the Vudrani deity Suyudha, who is deity of strategies, and the Dwarven deity of oaths, Kor, and even the minor deity Gwendolyn, protecting her Fangwood. Now on to side tangents. All of you knowing me, you know I like deities. And we have some here we have not fully explored enough in their own videos, nor do we have enough to do so. But we do have some options like the apocrypha or prestige classes. So while I usually try to spread my side tangents out across the video, most of them are going to be in a big chunk here. First of them being Regathiel, son of this and Feronia of the Plane of Fire. Regathiel has had to work twice as hard to prove he is on the side of the angels. And he has gone well beyond that, being the force most focused on the blind destruction of fiends, to the point of losing one of his 6 wings in battle. Most devoted of his faith are Crimson Templars, which are one of the reasons people speculate that he is the one behind the Crimson Oath. The Templars are, like our current Crimsons, those who are more than willing to do what is needed to be done, to allow their fellows to stay pure. They are slayers devoted solely to fiends, combining sneak attacks with flames that disintegrate the bodies of the dead. And being there alongside Regathiel, we have our second side tangent on the other crusading angel, Vilius. When she first was created in this world, the very sight of all the evil in the world led to her ripping out her own eyes. Her flesh is covered in countless scars, inflicted in one way or another by how ugly and cruel the world is. Her followers, likewise, are counted by their scars. The most devoted example being the Scar Seekers. These Templars purposely put themselves in harm's way, for the purpose of protecting others. Their scars become blessed by their deity, allowing them to heal their allies or harm their enemies more effectively. The real ace up their sleeve is the ability to sacrifice themselves in order to protect those closest to them, even if it costs them everything. And on to the third, we have Felania. She was just an Imperial Lord of Beauty, married to a martial-aligned Imperial Lord, until the day her husband died in battle. She famously took to the field herself and brought back his sword and his body, taking up his martial aspect while still being the beautiful demigod she always has been. Her edition is not a prestige class, but an apocrypha, and one which was built in Lastwall, the Steel Widows. Believing the best way to become strong is to experience loss, they purposely adopt orphans for the purpose of training them as knights. This is an interesting one because some of the Knights of Lastwall could easily have been raised in the Church of Felania over the traditional faith. How would that affect potential player characters, I wonder? But as for other deities, Abadar and Tureg do have Crusaders in the Knights. That itself is an issue considering Abadar hates charity and Tureg hates goblins and orcs. So the ones that usually are marching alongside Knights of Lastwall are usually the smaller, less conservative members of the faith. Aristal and Caden both are welcome to deities, though less popular than the more Crusader-focused ones. Arshay is of course welcomed. The two leaders of the main factions are transgender in one way or another, so no way they do not have at least some followers in the ranks. No. One last word on face: pantheons. First we have a chance to talk about pantheons, and Lastwall has some good ones. If you do not have the book, you might want to write these down. First, the Grave Lady's Guard and the Sorrow's Sword. The Grave Lady's Guard is devoted to the destruction of undead, and is, of course, centered around Pharasma, with an honor guard of the undead-hating undead Erasni, and the destroyer of everything Goem. The Sorrow's Sword, in turn, is more devoted to vengeance for the lost homeland, centered around the pair of Regathiel and Vildeus, with Iomade, the one who originally fought Tarbafarm, along with, again, Erasni and Golem. Glad to see these two getting along pretty well. But we also have the Keepers of the Hearth, devoted to defending the innocent. The Arcadian Khazar taking the lead on this one, working peacefully with Eredin's two heirs, Iomade and Milani. It should also be noted there is a fourth pantheon in the Lastwall book, The Endless Road, but it has little to no connection with the Knights of Lastwall. Maybe you could find an excuse at your table, but Desna, Gazra, and Gruhastha do not even break honorable mentions with deities, so. Of course, there's plenty more outside of pantheons where the faith is blended together. So let's use this as our final side tangent for the day. The effects of Calistria's faith on the blended faith of the Knights of Lastwall. It has been known that Calistrians and some of the faithful of other deities have begun a ritual of sleeping together to relieve the darkness in their hearts, which comes from spending so much time dealing with the darkness. Which happens in the real world as well, humans being too clingy to as much light as they can to get into when they get into the darkness, but it is widespread enough among the Knights of Lastwall to mention, as well as spreading to the Felanians, Serenites, Abadarians, Erasnians, and now even the stick-in-the-muds like Iomadarians and Eristalians. I'm pretty sure that some of those weren't the extended versions of those names, but close enough, you know what I mean. I would also like to examine places and distribution of the Knights, but both the name and the book tell the story of the devotion to the Gravelands and the reclamation of the lands from the undead. Everything else springs from recruiting elsewhere and dealing with undead threats. Well, it will definitely be a focus when dealing with other organizations. For today, when we look at locations, we've pretty much reached a dead end, even if we could still continue marching forward. But anyway, that takes us to the end of this week's episode. So with the Whispering Tyrant loose, this is not the last time we'll hear of the Knights of Lastwall for a while. Either way, come back next week, where we take a short break from Golarion. See you then.